the Sustainability Management Master's Program, you are answering one simple question. Do you care about your future generation? If you care about your kids, their grandkids, then you care about sustainability. And a sustainability manager is someone who has the tools to make people understand how they can contribute towards developing a sustainable world. We have both part-time and full-time students. Our curriculum is 30 hours. Instead of thesis, we have a research project course and a seminar course which provides them with the kind of research background they will need to be successful in their job. But at the same time, sustainability is not always everything about environment. It also relates to the business. They will take a sustainable business strategies course. They will take a project management course. Most of these courses are going to be taught by industry people, the people who are doing sustainability on a daily basis as a part of their job. Any organization that has a large number of employees and has a physical infrastructure, they will have to have a sustainability office. If you have the passion to develop and maintain a sustainable world, come to us and we will help you shape your passion into a career which will create an impact.
Thank you. Thank you, Dibs, and thank you, Khalid, for coordinating all this. And Brown and Caldwell appreciates the opportunity to present this topic, and like to thank also the other co-sponsors of the sustainability program. I've been fortunate enough to work with Dibs on this for, I don't know, what, 6, 7, 8 years, Dibs? And
yeah, more than that. Like, I have been here 8 years, and you and I became quick friends right after that.
Right. So yeah. So and thanks for the age compliment there too. So appreciate it. So the topic of my conversation today is global pharmaceutical companies and their sustainability efforts, and kind of an overview of their initiatives and impact. And I was thinking about this, Dibs, as we kind of put these slides together. I was saying to myself, who could probably teach a course on this. So there's a lot of information that we're going to try to get through within an hour. So, but basically broke this out. What are the challenges to the pharmaceutical industry as far as sustainability and the opportunities? We'll talk about the environmental footprint of the industry and the sustainability trends that we're seeing. I'll provide some examples that are out there, and where the industry is moving forward and the takeaways. Hopefully have time for some questions at the end, and then I know there's a breakout session with the students afterwards. So what I wanted to talk about with regards to the pharma's challenges in sustainability, there's some negative opinions and outside pressures that pharma does receive. Pharmaceutical companies, it's a personal trust that they have with the population. It's building trust through transparent communications and demonstrating commitment to shared values. So, such as ethical leadership and patient well-being. It's different. It's a different industry. We're not selling cars. We're not selling boats. This is a very personal industry as far as we're making medicines to create good public health. So there's always going to be significant public attention, and there's going to be pressure on the industry because of the products that they make. They produce vital medicines, but its environmental footprint is significant, and it's a target of very much varying public opinions. If you look at the pharmaceutical industry, it's a key contributor to global emissions due to complex product life cycles and the energy intensive value supply chain. And if the global healthcare industry was a country, it would probably rank 5th as the largest greenhouse gas emitter on the planet. So it does have a significant footprint, and it does as far as scope 1 and scope 2 emissions per $1 million of revenue, it's one of the highest industries. as far as emissions. It's always receiving growing pressure from regulators, investors, politicians, activists, consumers, and it's basically it's forced pharma companies to transition from business as usual, thinking of how we used to do projects back in the day where you were expecting to get a essentially return on investment within a year. It's transitioned to a more sustainable model. And sustainability in pharma factors a multifaceted concept of assessing performance based on the triple bottom line effect: people, planet, and profit. So the U.S. public opinion of pharma, this is somewhat interesting. I was kind of surprised at that. 18% of Americans have a positive opinion of the pharma industry, which really kind of surprised me. And 60% of the population views it negatively, and 32% really express a very negative opinion about the industry. So it's got a wide array of public opinions, and I think the primary concern with regards to negative public opinion is drug pricing and affordability. That'll come up. You hear that all the time within the politicians talking about it. There's disappointment sometimes with the patent practices that occur, the adverse effects that may be subject to one particular medication. There's always been some talk about unethical marketing, the transparency, the policy influence it has with lobbyists, and data privacy and breaches. There's obviously in clinical trials, there's concerns about data privacy and potential breaches that occur. And we of course know about the opioid epidemic, and that in the past has impacted pharma. When you think about, again, like you take the automotive industry, it really doesn't have these types of varying public opinions. So it is really an industry that's very much under microscope, and sustainability fits in very well with regards to how it survives and basically manufactures. Trying to advance the slide. Hold on. Okay, here we go. So people like to understand, well, what makes up the cost as far as what a pharmaceutical company, how they operate. And basically a third of the cost is related to materials and production. And then pretty much close to 50% is related to marketing and sales and research and development. In fact, a lot of times some of the negative attitudes about pharma occur from the fact that they're spending close to a third on marketing and sales and less on R&D. So you talk about branded drug companies that have a product that's on patent. They may see something like 30 to 50% profit margins, where generic drug manufacturers operate under a lower margin, like somewhere like 5 to 15%. And we hear politicians all the time talk about the exorbitant price of pharmaceuticals in the U.S., especially if you go across the border in Canada and they say, well, gee, it's a third of the cost or a tenth of a cost or something like that. And Bernie Sanders, senator from Vermont, talks about this all the time. And he talks about the basically there's a gap. He focuses on the gap between production costs and final prices. And he says it's the greedy market controlled pharmaceutical industry. It's really not a fair comparison at all. There's tremendous amounts of risk that's involved with regards to putting a product on market, and sometimes there's failures as far as it reaching markets. So it's a very scientific industry. It's very much focused on public health. It's very much focused on doing the right things. So, just because you can make a pill for real cheap, it doesn't take in the total cost of what the pharmaceutical industry does. So there's tremendous stakeholder pressure, regulators, investors. I mean, obviously, investors who who basically buy stock in the industry are looking for a return on their investment. So you have politicians, you have healthcare providers, advocacy groups that focus on various types of disease and advocating for certain types of patients. They all demand greater accountability and transparency, and very much the focus is on sustainability and its practices. And to give you an example, this is a California-based firm, Gilead. I worked with them. They actually had a formulation facility in New Jersey. They produce a couple of AIDS type medications. One's called Descovy Prep. And just to give you a perspective on this, they complain that people complain, the advocacy groups complain, well, you're charging me $2,000 a month for some pills, and so there's protests that occur. So this is something that the industry has to deal with as far as some of these negative opinions, and how are they going to work this in as far as sustainability. Again, remembering the three pillars of sustainability: environment, public, and the public forum, and also economics. So this is a company that does the right thing, has some really great medications out there on the market, not just for AIDS, but also for breast cancer. And so here they turn around and they create a positive opinion about HIV prevention. So they have a new drug product out. It's a large molecule product called Yestogo. It's for HIV prevention, and their goal is to reach out to 2 million people in primarily low middle income countries. And again, this is basically to champion America's innovation and advance the current administration's goal of ending mother-to-child transmission of HIV. So this is a interesting company. It gets some negative feedback, negative press, and then there's positive outcomes. So again, it's under, the pharmaceutical industry is under, increasing scrutiny due to its environmental impact, and faces activists and consumers, and it's basically making the industry focus more on sustainable practices. And there's so much negative public opinion with regards to drug pricing, unethical marketing, etc. So they embrace sustainability, the pharmaceutical industry, and again, looking at the three pillars of environmental, social, and economic. So on the environmental side, it's basically falls into four categories: reducing the carbon footprint. Again, it has a significant carbon footprint. Their objective is to reduce energy as much as possible, but also focus on water use and reuse. It's also there's a number of toxic material, hazardous materials that are disposed of, and the other part about their footprint is, of course, their supply chain. It's a significant footprint with regards to the supply chain. Again, waste and emissions. It has a greater environmental footprint than a lot of other sectors. That's again due to the intensive manufacturing, the packaging that goes into it, which all contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. Pharmaceutical pollution, basically, and I can talk about this quite a bit, is basically pharmaceuticals in the environment, and how pharmaceutical molecules and and drug products get into our waterways. And I'll talk about it maybe a little bit later. But one of the greatest threats, I think, with regards to the pharmaceutical industry, is looking at the issue of antimicrobial resistance. It's projected by 2050 that we'll see, it'll equal the amount of deaths of cancer. So it's really a significant potential issue, and pharmaceutical industry is doing a lot to try to reduce that upward trend. You'll if you go to any kind of ESG report, sustainability report of any large pharma company, you'll see some really great advancements and projects that they're working on. They're very focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but they're also focused on very much working on reducing water intensity and promoting water stewardship. The social aspect is interesting in sustainability. The big focus is access to medicines, and of course we all know in the United States this is a significant social issue because we do pay much higher prices for drugs in the United States. And you're seeing right now a significant reshoring that's taking place, that's occurring. So, this is always a kind of a debate that occurs. Again, the pharmaceutical industry has a very short period of time to make, reasonable profits on their medicines, on their blockbuster products that they put out, and so they have a certain period of time. But then it's subject to generic medications, and then the margins become much lower. Equitable healthcare, it's a very much an important aspect of social sustainability and for the pharmaceutical industry, and again, always promoting fair access of the product. They can influence health equity. That's a whole nother portion of this industry that I've only been exposed to very, not significantly, but I can tell you the amount of money that is being spent on, trying to get medicines overseas and get them in the hands of, in developing countries is significant. It's really remarkable what the pharmaceutical industry does as far as equitable healthcare. Patient advocacy, again, number of pharmaceutical companies will collaborate with advocacy groups. So, for example, we talked about Gilead and how they're working with HIV advocacy groups, and so it's another part of the social engineering of sustainability. And workforce well-being. All pharmaceutical companies that basically have a global global reach as a supplier, or even as like large pharma, they all focus on human rights and fair labor practices. So, in fact, these facilities, their standards are audited. So. Financial, you're always balancing profit with environmental and social responsibility. So, they look for sustainable financial performance. It's not to dismiss profits, but it's to basically tie in the other two pillars of sustainability. What it does, it actually can lead to long-term cost savings in production, but it also can lead to brand loyalty. You'll find that, if certain individuals who are taking medications may become very loyal to that particular product, and they won't accept the generic. So it can increase sales. Again, pharmaceutical companies model financial prudent decisions and where to source materials, where to get certain products and supplies. Again, labor, they consider fair labor practices very important. So they won't, they carefully audit their suppliers. Um, Again, balancing priorities. It's important for them to maximize profits. Serving the common good is always a challenge, but profits are easily measured. The societal and environmental impacts are a little bit more difficult to quantify. So, but they're always looking at the three pillars. And again, the industry is profitable, but despite the large profits, they're always facing the public scrutiny of high drug prices. Um, Factors in basically influencing financial performance is productivity and innovation. It takes a lot to develop a molecule that works, and so the drug companies, I've seen drug companies where they write off $9 billion because they had a drug product that thought was going to work, and basically found out that no, it doesn't work, and or it can work but just doesn't have the market for it. So I've seen the pharmaceutical industry write off developmental drugs just like that. Um, Basically, again, the patents and the expiration of the patents is extremely important, and how do you basically impact or influence financial performance when you have what's called a patent cliff hanging over your head? Market economic conditions really influence financial performance right now. Market conditions are very, I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the industry with regards to the tariffs that we're seeing. But on the other hand, the markets or the pharmaceutical industry is responding by basically it's incredible the amount of money that they're projected to spend as far as new facilities are concerned. Regulatory environment's important. The FDA still exists. You've got they're going to continue to audit and inspect facilities, and so they're still issuing warning letters. So if you don't have a facility that follows GMP, it's going to be subject to regulatory scrutiny, and not only just U.S. regulatory scrutiny, but if you're a U.S. pharma company and you're producing a drug product for Europe, you're going to have a European Union equivalent to an FDA come in, or if you're exporting to China, you're going to see a Chinese FDA come in. So it's not just U.S. FDA; it's other countries. And of course, the supply chain management is incredible. It's a very complex supply chain, and you have lots and lots of different suppliers that all basically feed into the large pharma industry. Just as far as some information on the patent cliffs, we talk about it, but it can result in significant revenue declines, over 80% in the first year. So and we'll go over some examples, but it can cause sales declines up to 60%. So sometimes you see, you'll see branded manufacturers would still have products that are equivalent to the product that just went off patent. So you end up creating a two-tiered market system. You have biologics and small molecules. Biologics face a slower market erosion because they're much more complicated product to develop, and subject to less dramatic price reductions compared to small molecule generics. You'll see companies pursue merger acquisitions. This happens all the time. They invest in niche therapies. So it's very much a revenue. There's a lot of revenue uncertainty that occurs during the patent cliff, and if you look at some of these companies, there's some of the large pharma companies are facing significant patent cliffs, so they're looking for the next generation of drug product that can help them out. And of course, you have regulatory influences that occur. So some of these acts, like Hatch-Waxman, the Inflation Reduction Act. That's all influenced R&D incentives and market dynamics. So a little bit of an example of a patent cliff. You have Pfizer's Lipitor. When Pfizer acquired Warner Lambert back in 2000, Lipitor was one hot drug for cholesterol reduction, and it was and Pfizer, remarkable marketing company as far as marketing pharmaceuticals, and they basically built it up to an annual sales of about $12 billion. And then when it patent expired in 2011, sales plummeted to 71%. There were a lot of new competitive statin drugs out on the market. BV's Humira is another, was a large molecule product. Again, when that expired in 2023, it basically reduced its revenue by $12 billion. And you'll see some significant revenue reduction that occurs in the pharmaceutical industry. That's what's, for a small firm or even a regular sized firm, these numbers are astronomical as far as the losses that you see. Just give you an example with Pfizer. Pfizer was during COVID was making tremendous amounts of money on the vaccine, but also on Paxlovid. And as COVID calmed down and it was not a pandemic, sales significantly dropped. So that's not an example of a patent cliff, but that's just basically something that occurred based on market life cycle. I just wanted to say, so with their sustainability efforts, social responsibility, financial strategies, they're all deeply interconnected. And so let's just talk about, its footprint now and sustainability trends in the industry. So their footprint, again, is greenhouse gas emissions. It's energy intensive. There's cold chain logistics that occur because a lot of times these materials need to be shipped out under refrigeration. Water usage and pollution. Again, large volumes of water are used for cleaning. In the biopharma industry, you use for buffer solutions. So you basically have high water consumption. You have effluents. And again, we talk about pharmaceuticals in the environment. And I mentioned, again, antimicrobial resistance is one of the global health concerns of the WHO and of the pharmaceutical industry. So it's very much a concern. They generate a lot of waste, a lot of solid, liquid waste, hazardous waste, solvents. If you go to a large pharmaceutical plant, you essentially see, companies like Veolia and Clean Harbors. They have a daily presence at these facilities. And the biggest thing you want to increase utilization. You want to increase production capability. So single-use plastics are being used in the industry, and I'll show some information about single-use plastics, but this is very much a trend. So there's liners that are used in reactors. You're doing this essentially to eliminate cleaning processes. Here's some of the emissions, looking at greenhouse gas emissions. If we said that here's all the greenhouse gas emissions projected in US in 2021. We saw 4.6 billion metric tons, and about 5% of that is under other industries, and that includes pharma and auto. So some of this other manufacturing, consists of like chemical refining, oil and gas, cement kilns, lime, food and beverage that falls under this area of manufacturing. But pharma does have some footprint to it. So what is the major consumer of energy in pharma? It's essentially HVAC and air treatment. So all this production is done under these under these beautiful suites that you see right here, with high intensity lighting and climate control. There's HEPA filters that are being used, so that of course increases energy consumption. And so everything is under HVAC control. Depends on the type of clean room that you need. But there's very ISO standards for the type of clean room that you're working in. So very much, an energy intensive, types of facility. And this is just a clean, say an example of a clean room. And there may be multiple clean rooms in a large pharma facility. Cold production, you have chillers, again, being used. They consume a lot of electric. There's thermal energy for boilers, steam production. And then you have number of processes, have drying processes and generation of pure steam. There's a lot of energy that is used for distillation, for production of distilled water, or what we call water for injection, or WIFI water. And here's essentially the breakdown of energy consumption in a pharma facility. So again, 60% of it's related to HVAC. I think it's about 13% is related to lighting. So this gives you a perspective of energy consumption and where can you save energy. Well, it's sort of tough to save energy from the standpoint that you look at more efficient climate control systems, but this is where your big spending is occurring right here in HVAC. Again, pharma energy and resource efficiency, the focus areas, they are focused on HVAC systems. There's a number of pharma facilities that are relying on renewable energy, whether it's on site. You'll see a lot of pharma facilities with solar panels, and so that's an objective of then transitioning to a renewable energy source. There's a lot of focus now on process intensification, so going from traditional batch processing to continuous manufacturing to reduce energy and material consumption and accelerate production. That's one of the things that occurs. You have, you do batch production, you start it up, you run it, you shut it down, you basically either clean the vessel or you have to go back to removing a liner, putting a new liner in. So just that break in that flow really does increase energy. So the idea is to look at continuous processes versus a batch. And of course, right size equipment. It's important to really understand the size of equipment. You want to make sure it's not over designed and you're not using excess energy. Here's just a schematic of the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions that occur in the pharmaceutical industry. So they're very much focused on scope 1 and scope 2. And there's a number of, the large pharma is very focused on scope 3, what's occurring with their upstream suppliers. So for example, we had a pharmaceutical client that we work for, and they've asked us to calculate what our scope 1 and 2 emissions are, so they could basically translate it to what scope 3 emissions are. So it's a very much a focus on large pharma right now. And a number of pharma companies are pushing their suppliers to, again, be more sustainable, to look at their footprint, understand where they're spending, where their emissions are coming from, and to understand if they can be more efficient in their processes to reduce emissions. This just shows some of the ranges of action that they're doing, to reduce greenhouse emissions. This comes from PSCI, which is called the Pharmaceutical Supply Chain Initiative. I would suggest some of you, if you're interested, Pharmaceutical Supply Chain Initiative actually is putting on a 2-day webinar. I think it might be next week, and it's on the decarbonization of the industry. So if you're really interested in understanding decarbonization of pharma, suggest that you go to their website. Again, it's psci.org. But these are this is some of the focus with regards to sourcing raw materials, redesigning packaging, looking at water sustainability. There's the PSCI organization is set up for not just large pharma and putting together programs, but also educating their suppliers. So this is the type of stuff that they're doing for sustainability. A little bit of information about where they are with their targets. There's a number of companies that have some interesting ambitions as far as their scope 1 and 2 targets, and then looking at scope 3 targets. So Novo Nordisk is an interesting graph. They're talking about, basically being zero CO2 emissions by 2030. I think that's, pretty ambitious goal. Right now, they've reduced emissions, I think, by 33%. So they got some ways to go. They're also focusing on, looking at outside emissions by, for purchased goods and services. And so their objective is to work with their suppliers and incorporate in their supplier contracts. Look at Novartis here. They again have a very aggressive target for scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. They've progressed pretty well. They basically have reduced their emissions, I think, by about 63% compared to their 2016 baseline. And their target right now, they're adjusting their target, but they want to reduce their scope 1 and 2 emissions by 90%. And this is a 2030 target, and they want to reduce their scope 3 emissions by 42%. So a lot of these companies are very focused on reducing their own greenhouse gas emissions, but they're also incorporating it into their supply chain, and basically making it a contractual requirement. Again, integrating sustainability into plant design, a lot of closed loop systems to recover and reuse water. That's something that we're very focused on now, is that there's opportunities now. They're using tremendous amounts of water and so, for example, in cooling, and what can we do with that water? And there's a lot of, say, reverse osmosis pharmaceutical production water that rejected TDS concentrated water. And the idea is to take that as relatively clean water and recirculate it back into a utility mode. And what I will say is, so for example, in India, where there's a lot of API plants, they utilize zero liquid discharge, and they recycle 95 to 99% of their water from instead of being discharged, they're actually putting it back into utilities. So there's a number of ZLD systems in India, which so they've got they really have really written the book with regards to water conservation. It's very interesting. Again, wastewater treatment is very much a focus area with regards to pharmaceuticals and environment. And again, the idea is to manage water effectively before it's discharged into a surface water stream or it's being reused. Green chemistry is a lot of focus now on green chemistry, looking at construction materials, high recycled content. I was talking to somebody in the pharmaceutical industry that was redoing their facility. So they had these old doors, and instead of throwing the doors out in the in the dumpster. The idea was to recycle those doors and put some to actually wrap them with something that makes it look like a brand new door. So there's a focus of not only sustainable materials that are used in production, so just office design, things like that. Again, solvent recovery. A lot of your organic synthesis plants focus on solvent recovery, and again, recycling solvents and reusing solvents to reduce hazardous waste costs. Again, green reagents. We'll talk a little bit about that, but there's a lot of green chemistry that is used in the development of in doing like organic synthesis. There's catalysts. There's different other types of compounds that are being used as far as green chemistry principles. And again, waste minimization and management. The biggest debate out there is single-use technology versus clean in place. So people are focused on looking at lean processes and reducing waste coming from these processes. And again, packaging optimization is always significant. I mean, I think packaging there probably still could be a lot of work done in packaging. I mean, if you see certain drug products and they're packaged, you've got product inserts, you've got the box that basically holds the product. You've got say with some of these products that are injected, you'll have injectable pens, and so there's a lot of focus now on packaging optimization. It still has a ways to go, but it's an area that pharma is focused on. Here's some green chemistry examples. Sertraline, Zoloft, Pfizer re-engineered the process and replaced it with less expensive and toxic solvents, and made it more of an aqueous base process. And I remember when I was involved in the initial design of the involved in the building construction of Zoloft. They made this in Puerto Rico, and I can remember when that product was made, there was probably 8 different steps, and the steps they re-engineered it. Steps were significantly reduced, and the solvents they used a lot less solvents. Again, focus is on greener solvents, so the idea is to use water, ethanol, ionic liquids. So instead, the chlorinated solvents, there's a real focus on getting away from the methylene chloride and the other types of chlorinated solvents. And again, there's enzyme reactions. So companies like Merck use biocatalysts. Again, the focus is basically, eliminating some of these using enzymes versus catalysts. Again, continuous manufacturing is a focus. So their cancer drug Keytruda is now a continuous process versus a batch. Shorter synthetic routes. I mentioned Zoloft. Merck's went from an 11-step process to a 2-step process. So again, shorter synthesis routes ends up making life easier, and of course reduces energy, reduces waste. And there's some companies now that are using engineering organisms to create products, precursors. So for example, a roach has developed a bacteria that's developed, basically ends up with a final product that's used as a precursor for their Tamiflu. So a lot of green chemistry solutions out there. There's a talk about what, I talked about single use and what's more sustainable, stainless steel or single use systems. And again, single use are, essentially plastics, ethylene, polyethylene type liners, a lot of plastic that is used, and stainless steel, conventional stainless steel reactors that after after use are steam cleaned and ready for the next batch of product. And you're comparing, single use versus stainless. You have to consider the operational performance before, during, and after manufacturing. So, water use, energy consumption, waste generation, and disposal. The only way to look at this is using, doing a life cycle assessment, determining the environmental impacts. And what's interesting, there's a place in the world for single-use components, especially if you have a facility that is doing a number of different types of products, and it's, say, a contract manufacturer and they're small batches. But if you're doing if you're doing a couple products and you're making more than say 10 batches, ultimately it's the lower footprint is stainless steel. So there's always this debate, which is more sustainable, stainless steel or single use. You'll never get away from not using plastic in the production process, but there needs to be thought when it comes to how you're going to ramp up production, and what's this production going to look like. So a lot of times life cycle assessments are conducted as they develop the what they think the final treatment train may be. So the benefits of sustainability planning: again, regulatory compliance, stay ahead. You have the increasing environmental regulations that do come up. And you do see, again, what's tough with the pharmaceutical industry is it's a global industry. So you do see different regulations coming up. So it's tough to be a mind reader of what's going on out there. And it's important that they stay on top of the regulations. There's definitely opportunities for cost savings. It does enhance brand value. The more you can talk about it, put it out there as a in an ESG or a sustainability report, does enhance brand value. And again, it does increase efficiency. So, the objective is to always improve resource management and streamline manufacturing processes. So some quick examples, I looked at Time Magazine 2025. Pharma represents only 5% of the top 100 companies. Sanofi's ranked 10th, highest score, followed by Novartis, AstraZeneca, Biogen, which is a Chinese company, and Merck. Sanofi has some really good examples of some of the work that they've done in sustainability. They've worked with Schneider Electric, which is, I think, the number one sustainable number one ranking under Times. So they worked with Sanofi and also Novartis on basically putting in electrical, they called Energize for their looking at powering their EV fleets and things of that nature, and looking at renewable energy at their operations. Sanofi's done really good work with PVC and secondary packaging. They've been looking at, right now they're experimenting, looking at these insulin pens and looking at, pilot take-back programs, how to collect these pens and needles. So instead of going in the trash, they're looking at, take-backs. And so, and really neat thing they did was, they use horseshoe crab blood to detect low levels of toxic bacteria in products and medicine. And they've shifted to a synthetic substitute in 2 of their vaccine plants. So that's kind of interesting things that, maybe a lot of people just don't hear about, but there's some really good initiatives that are out there, being done by large pharma. Pfizer they put out in 2020, they put out a $1.25 billion 10-year sustainability bond. So, if you're investing, you can invest in the Pfizer sustainability bond. I think it returns, it's got like a 2.65% return. But if you're interested in, buying bonds. You can buy a Pfizer bond. So they use this money to fund projects, and they have 5 criteria for their projects. They look at green buildings, energy efficiency, pollution prevention, sustainable water and wastewater management, and patient access. So I got to go quick here. I think I'm running out of time. Wind power medicine, the Takeda, which is a Japanese company, they're working with a company that has introduced wind-powered trimerons for transatlantic shipment, and also they reduce greenhouse gas emissions because they have refrigeration that is basically you can see solar on this boat right here, and so it's a something that they're looking at transport. I'm not going to show this. It is the next slide is available online. As an example of the Takeda. The Takeda is basically it's a plasma facility. They get blood plasma and they have vials. There's a lot of plastic waste we call red bag waste, and they've created a on-site sterilizer. It's considered a medical waste, so they have an on-site sterilizer and the basically shredder, and they recycle all their plastics back to being used and used in the market. So, but if you go to takeda.com, you'll see this YouTube video, and this is actually a site that we've worked on in regards to wastewater. As an example, what's really cool about Takeda is they had their employees pick projects and said, we'd like you to pick different projects to show our corporate social responsibility. So the entire employee, all their employees, different types of products. So these were some of the products or projects that they initiated from a social responsibility perspective. So moving forward, and some of the takeaways, again, major challenges, very much a complex supply chain. There's regulatory compliance that you have to stay on top of, involving sustainability standards across different global markets, cost and investment. It's great to invest in sustainable technologies such as continuous manufacturing, eco-friendly packaging, but this does take upfront capital investment. What I will say about the pharmaceutical industry, as far as looking at projects for investment, which was typically an attitude of like, let's look at 1 year of payback, they're extending that now. So if you have a sustainable project that has a 3 or 4 year return on investment, they're good with that. So their objective is to spend the money on sustainable and put in sustainable projects. Balancing innovation and sustainability, very tough with regards to looking at drug launches. Okay, I want to be sustainable, but I want to get this drug on the market ASAP. So there's some trade-off there with developmental speed. Waste management, it still generates large pharmaceutical packaging waste and also single-use plastics. So again, very focused on waste management. And again, their focus right now is finding more green product development, looking at existing drugs and how to produce that while maintaining safety and efficacy. Here's just something by the challenges by developmental stage, research and development. There's definitely some areas and challenges in the various stages of pharmaceutical development. So I'm not going to get into this details on that. What I will focus on though is that basically, I think one of the largest challenges is manufacturing and the supply chain. Is looking at how to get product out to market. And as an example, we all remember COVID-19 being refrigerated, so the vaccines were refrigerated. So this was a significant undertaking in itself, to basically package these materials in dry ice, under, basically at, I think temperature is like minus 60 or something like that. So significant effort as far as looking at it being, coming from the factory to the plane, being shipped to the plane to the distribution hubs. So you can see the CO2, you can see the CO2 footprint, not just from the transportation side, but also from handling dry ice. And this just gives you a perspective of, the data that people look at with regards to looking at the emissions coming off the dry ice containers of, carrying a COVID vaccine. So, again, the responses and opportunities in renewable energy and energy efficiency, green chemistry, very much a circular economy now, looking at ways to reduce packaging, reusable containers, sustainable packaging, always looking at supply chain optimization, collaborative innovation. There's a lot of partnerships with not only the different sustainability organizations and people who create the packaging material, but also there's very much collaborative effort between the pharmaceutical industries. And again, everybody's focused on enhanced reporting and transparency. And again, very much a focus on social sustainability and access. This is something that came from PSCI. I mentioned the decarbonization playbook. And again,
George, we are almost out of time.
Okay, and I would suggest that you go to that. It's a very good document. And I would also suggest that you look at there is a webinar coming up. So again, just the takeaways, it's the industry faces significant public attention around pressure. But its footprint is substantial. And there are major concerns with, again, AMR, greenhouse gas emissions, social issues come up. Financial sustainability is important, obviously. Patent cliff has very much an impact on it, but there are some great sustainability efforts that are being being carried out by pharma companies. And ISPE, International Society of Pharmaceutical Engineering, just came out with their sustainability guide. So I'll just leave you with one thing. This is my mentor in college and my advisor, Dr. Odom, the father of modern ecology. We're able to eat, breathe, drink, and eat in comfort, but we take things for granted because we don't pay money for most of them. So I think before the word sustainability came out, this guy was already a leader in this area. So, and with that, I'll sorry it went a little bit too long, but hopefully
that